Welcome back for another deep dive. And today we're going to be tackling something that's really got people talking AI in qualitative research. I know there are a lot of questions about this.
Yeah, definitely a lot of anxiety.
So we thought we'd really dive deep into this Q&A with Susanne Friese, who is an expert in kind of navigating those tricky ethical waters in qualitative research.
That's right.
So let's just jump right in. A lot of researchers are wondering, can journals even tell if a paper has been written with AI?
Yeah, that's a very common concern. And the truth is that the current software that we have to detect AI writing is not very reliable. It often misinterprets even human writing as AI generated. But I would say that an experienced reader can very often spot AI writing.
Really? So you can kind of see like the stylistic things about it that tip you off.
Exactly. So it just doesn't have that same nuance that human researchers would bring to their writing. So I would say that although it can be helpful to refine and improve your writing, I wouldn't recommend submitting anything that's fully generated by AI.
Right. Makes sense. You want your research to reflect your own experience and knowledge.
Exactly.
What about data security? This is another one that comes up a lot when we're using these tools, especially with sensitive research information. I know ChatGPT has that, team enterprise plan where they claim that they won't use business data for training.
Right. Well, actually, with both the free and paid versions of these tools, you can usually opt out of having the data used for training, and especially in business-to-business interactions. So if you use the enterprise versions or applications that use AI through an API, data privacy is typically just the default setting, so that data is not going to be used for training the model.
So there are ways to keep your data safe.
Yes.
So then the question is it even ethical to use AI for qualitative research?
Yeah, that's a really interesting question. And I would say that it depends a lot on how you're using it and the specific prompts that you're feeding it. Because just like you can phrase interview questions in a leading way, you can also write prompts that can lead the AI in a specific direction. So it's really important to be mindful of that potential for bias in your prompts.
So wielding it responsibly.
Exactly.
Not letting it drive the bus.
Yeah, I see it as a great ally for tasks like quickly pulling out relevant data. But I would say that when it comes to the interpretation of that data, you have to be much more careful. Because if you hand over the reins of interpretation to the AI, you're giving up a lot of control over the research process.
Absolutely.
Which in qualitative research, you don't want to do.
Right. Qualitative research is all about meaning and nuance and context and lived experience. Mm-hmm. So you don't really want to outsource that to a machine.
Yeah, you're absolutely right. And that leads to another question that I hear quite often as well. We know that these AI models are trained on these huge data sets, but can they even recognize their own biases? Can they be self-aware enough to know when they're being biased?
Like, can AI look in a mirror and see its own reflection?
Yeah. The simple answer is no, they can't. They lack that consciousness and self-reflection that we have as humans. But I think a very interesting exercise to engage with AI is to actually ask those tools about their biases and see how they respond. You can really learn a lot about how they think and see where the limitations are.
Right. So more work for the researcher to really think critically about the output.
Absolutely.
So now let's get to something I know a lot of our listeners are probably wondering about. Coding data in qualitative research.
Yeah.
Can AI help with that?
Yes, actually. So some of the qualitative data analysis software or QDA software, some of it already has these conversational AI features that can assist with coding. So they can suggest codes, and they can even point you to specific segments of your data that support those codes.
So it's like having a little AI research buddy.
Exactly.
Have you tried it? Have you played around with it?
I have, and I found it's very accurate for very straightforward questions. But as soon as you get into more nuanced topics, they tend to just give you too many codes, a lot of which are not correct. So you still have to do a lot of cleaning up.
I can't replace human judgment.
Exactly. Right. And this is very important to remember, that the responsibility for accurate and ethical analysis rests with the researcher.
Right. Of course.
Not with the tool.
Not with the tool. Now let's zoom out for a second.
AI whispers, let's dive in. Qualitative flow, leading the way. Discover the tales in a digital sway.
Because I think a lot of people are also concerned about the larger implications of AI for research. Like, what are the risks of becoming too reliant on AI for decision-making? Are we going to lose some of the rigor and critical thinking that's so important in research? And what if there are errors or biases in the AI's analysis? Who's accountable for that?
Right. That's a really good question. And All of these are excellent questions, and I think they all highlight the importance of really using these AI tools thoughtfully. And as we just said, the researcher is still accountable, even when you're using AI tools. And to really avoid the risks of over-reliance, I think it's really important to develop very clear procedures for AI-assisted analysis. So this means having guidelines for prompting the AI so that the prompts are unbiased and they're well-structured. And it also means that you have to weave those core principles of qualitative analysis into the whole process.
So it's really a complement to our skills, not a replacement.
Exactly.
And, one fear that I hear from a lot of researchers is, what if the AI claims ownership of my work?
Right.
It sounds a little sci-fi, but
Yeah.
I think it's a genuine concern.
Yeah, I understand that. But let me just try to reassure you that AI tools, as they are right now, they don't have the capacity for intent or consciousness. So they cannot claim ownership of your work any more than a hammer can claim ownership of a house.
Right.
Yeah.
That makes sense. But what about our intellectual property? Are there safeguards in place?
Yeah. I mean, it's always good to check the privacy statements of the specific tools that you're using. But for example, OpenAI, their policy explicitly states that the user owns both the input and the output that's generated by the tool.
Okay. That's good to know. But what about peer reviewers? Are they even ready to evaluate research that's been, that has incorporated AI analysis?
That is a valid point. And this is where I really hope that the journals are doing their homework. Because ideally, they should be selecting reviewers who have expertise in both qualitative research and AI, because it really takes a unique set of skills to be able to properly assess that research.
Like they need to be bilingual almost.
Exactly.
In the two worlds of qualitative research and AI. Now, another concern that we've heard from some listeners is the cost.
Yeah.
Especially for students. The hardware needed to even do AI research can be pretty expensive.
Yeah.
So how can we make this more accessible to everyone?
I think instead of focusing on the personal laptops of the students, the emphasis should be on departmental resources or university resources. So the institution should be providing students with the necessary technology.
So making it accessible.
Exactly, so that it doesn't become a question of privilege.
Yeah.
And there are also more cost-effective alternatives. For example, if you look at cloud transcription services, they can be much more affordable and sometimes even more secure than just doing manual transcription yourself.
Especially if they're already set up to handle sensitive data.
Exactly.
So now one of our listeners pointed out, and I thought this was really interesting, that a large percentage of people using AI, particularly students, don't have that formal training in computer science or AI ethics. So how can we ensure that AI is being used ethically if most of the users don't have that specialized background?
Well, I don't think that you need a deep technical understanding of AI in order to use it ethically. I think what's much more important is to have practical experience with those tools and a very good understanding of the limitations of these tools. So I always say you don't need to be a mechanic in order to be able to drive a car safely. You just need to know the rules of the road, and you have to know what your car can do and what it cannot do.
Okay, so it's more about being a responsible user than really understanding the nuts and bolts.
Exactly.
Whispers, let's dive in. Qualitative flow, leading the way. Discover the tales in the digital.
Now, another question that we got from a listener is about the objectivity of themes that are generated by AI. Because some listeners are concerned about this subjective nature of AI outputs and the potential for what they call hallucinations or inaccuracies.
Right.
So how can we be sure that we're generating objective themes in our research when we're using AI?
So I think it's important to realize that what AI calls themes is actually very different from thematic analysis as we know it in qualitative research. So AI might pick up on certain clusters of words and call them themes, but that's very different from the very rigorous process that we as qualitative researchers use to develop themes.
So AI themes are not our themes.
Exactly. And the other thing that's really important to acknowledge is that qualitative research itself is inherently subjective. The researcher is the instrument, both in data collection and in analysis. And the researcher's own perspectives and experiences will inevitably shape the whole research process.
Yeah, we can't get away from that.
Absolutely. And in that sense, the AI can actually offer a very valuable outside perspective because it can challenge our assumptions and it can help us to identify potential blind spots that we might not have recognized on our own.
So it can be a tool for reflexivity.
Absolutely.
To help us be more aware of our own biases.
Exactly.
Okay. Now, one listener made a comment that I thought was really profound. They said, it feels like AI is doing the research for us, rather than assisting us?
Mhm.
Are we giving up too much control to these tools? I think it really gets at the heart of a lot of people's anxieties about AI.
Yes, absolutely. And I think it really depends on the choices that we make as researchers. So if we let the AI take over completely, then yes, it will drive the research bus. But the quality of that journey is questionable. It's kind of like a student who's just copying their homework instead of doing it themselves.
Right.
They might get a passing grade, but they haven't really learned anything.
They're not internalizing the process.
Exactly.
Yeah. So it's about using AI in a way that deepens our understanding rather than just outsourcing the work.
Exactly. I think of AI as a really helpful sous chef in the kitchen.
Oh, I like that.
So you wouldn't, as a chef, give up the entire cooking process to your sous chef, but you might give them certain tasks so that you can free yourself up to focus on your own expertise.
So you can focus on the creative part.
Exactly. And I think that's a really important takeaway from this whole discussion. AI can be a powerful tool for qualitative research, but it needs to be used thoughtfully, and it needs to be used ethically. And it's about finding that balance between leveraging the capabilities of AI and maintaining our own expertise and our own control over the research process.
Absolutely. But we'll be back with part 2 of this discussion. We will dive into some even more thought-provoking questions about AI and qualitative research, so stay tuned for that.
AI whispers, let's dive in. Qualitative flow, leading the way. Discover the tales in a digital sway.
Welcome back to our deep dive on AI and qualitative research. We're picking up right where we left off, talking about some of the anxieties and questions that researchers have.
Yeah. So a listener asked, how can we build trust in AI?
Mm-hmm.
How can we move past that fear and skepticism and feel confident using these tools in our research?
You know, I think a big part of the answer is to understand that AI is not some all-knowing being. It's a tool. It's a tool that was created by humans. And it's only as good as the data it's trained on and the humans who are using it. So it's not about having blind faith in technology. It's about understanding how it works, what it can do well, and what it can't do well.
So the more you understand it, the less intimidating it seems.
Exactly. And I encourage researchers to really experiment with these tools, play around with them, see what they can do, what they can't do. Because the more familiar you become with them, I think the less you'll see them as this mysterious thing that you should be afraid of.
Right.
And you start seeing it more as a partner in research.
Yeah. Demystify it. Now, I have to ask this because this came up a lot in the comments. Can we trust big tech companies with our research data? I mean, to use these tools we often have to send our data to their servers for processing. So are we putting sensitive information at risk?
Right. Well, that is a concern that I've thought about a lot myself. And I think for me personally, using this technology does require a degree of trust, just like we rely on other technologies in our daily lives.
Right. We trust banks with our financial data.
Exactly. Our email providers with our communication. So it's part of living in a digitally connected world.
Okay.
But I also want to emphasize that researchers always have the choice to not use AI if they feel it's going to compromise the privacy of their participants,
Okay.
or if it violates their own ethical principles. So the decision really lies with the researcher,
Right.
and it's a decision that should be made very carefully.
Okay, so weighing those risks and benefits. Now, let's get practical for a minute. What about journal editors? Are they open to publishing research that incorporates AI?
Yeah.
Or is there still some resistance?
Yeah. That's a great question. And the reality is that there is still some variability out there. Some journals might be more open to it than others.
Okay.
So I would just say check the guidelines of each journal before you submit anything.
Be prepared.
Exactly. And be transparent. Be upfront about how you've used AI in your research. Address any ethical considerations that might be relevant.
Transparency, always important.
Absolutely.
Okay. Wow. It's amazing to think about everything we've covered from AI-assisted coding to those big philosophical questions about what AI is going to do to research. And through all of that, the idea of balance keeps coming up, right?
Yeah. It's about finding that right mix between tapping into the power of AI, but also staying true to what makes qualitative research so special in the first place. And I think this balance is also really important in how we talk about these issues. We have to keep these conversations going, sharing what we're learning, and working together to figure out how to best use these tools ethically in our research.
It's teamwork, right? We're all figuring this out together, and the more we can learn from each other, the better we're going to be at using AI to its full potential. but also keeping our research strong.
Yeah.
So what's next? What do you think about the future of AI?
Oh, well, this is really just the beginning. AI is constantly changing, and we're always learning new things about it. So I think we just have to stay open to new possibilities and be flexible.
You're right. We have to be adaptable because this AI landscape is always changing.
And we as researchers need to be willing to adapt too, learn new tools, try new ways of doing things, and always be open to learning.
Yeah, it's about staying ahead of the curve and making sure our skills are staying up to date with the latest developments. It's exciting and a little scary at the same time.
Right. I think it's more exciting than scary. It's such a great opportunity for us to grow as researchers and really push the boundaries of what we can do.
Well said. And thank you so much for sharing all your insights today. This has been such a fascinating conversation.
Oh, it's been my pleasure. And to all of our listeners out there, thank you for joining us for another deep dive. Hopefully you now have a better understanding of the complex and ever-changing world of AI and qualitative research. Just remember to keep exploring those new ideas, keep asking questions, and share what you're learning with others.
And remember that the future of AI isn't something that's being done to us. We're all shaping it together. So let's be thoughtful about the challenges, aware of the risks, and work together to use AI to make our research even better. Until next time, keep diving deep.
AI whispers, let's dive in. Qualitative flow, leading the way. Discover the tales in a digital sway.